How do you do? My name is Azby BROWN, and I'm a volunteer with Safecast. My basic role is outreach and research, and today I'm happy to be presenting to you. I regret not being able to be there in person, but hopefully sometime in the near future I'll be able to meet more of you face to face. I'll start with some brief slides to explain the Safecast project and put it into context, and then hopefully it'll create a basis for us to discuss further in the future. I'll switch to the slides. So what is Safecast? Basically, Safecast began in response to what we perceived as a serious information vacuum in the immediate aftermath of the Fukushima disaster in March 2011. Like many people, we were concerned about the situation. We weren't sure whether we would need to flee. We found ourselves not fully trusting official sources of information, and looking on Twitter and Facebook and other social media, there were a lot of people really in extreme anxiety about the situation. But what was most striking to us was that even consulting our knowledgeable friends, experts in the field, they found that they were unable to find adequate information to help them determine what was going on. So our response was to make a system, develop radiation detectors, create mapping system, and build a community. And this was really the key, was to find people who were interested in helping and wanted to measure radiation. Our organization is fairly uncharacteristic in a lot of ways. It began with three people: Joey Ito, who is the director of the MIT Media Lab; Sean Bonner, who's an entrepreneur based in LA; and Peter Franken, who is a Dutch expert in financial technology and also an engineer. And those three had been friends for a long time and began discussing online in a chat room the situation and what to do, and gradually pulled in their colleagues and friends and had introductions from others, and this simply grew into a large network of people, which today remains an ad hoc network. So it's a non-hierarchical organization, but yet we think it's been very effective, very agile, and able to adjust quickly to new conditions. Many people ask us about our funding. Our independence is very important. We have avoided government funding. We subsist primarily on donations, and this means, of course, individuals, crowdfunding, several important grants from foundations such as the Knight Foundation and the Shuttleworth Foundation. We get sometimes manufacturers donate parts or things to us as well, but the main thing is people donate their time. It is overwhelmingly a volunteer effort, and almost everybody works without getting paid. A little bit more about the why and how we do what we do. I want to stress that the primary purpose of Safecast is to provide an independent, non-ideological basis for comparison which citizens can participate in and contribute to. So the keys there are participation and independence. And also non-ideological. We are not anti-nuclear, we are not pro-nuclear. If we have any issue that we are lobbying for, it is for openness. And I think this puts us very much in line with what Nuclear Transparency Watch is also trying to do. Our primary output are crowdsourced online maps of radiation, which has been gathered by our volunteers. And I will switch quickly to a demo of our primary online map. We also have iOS maps and maps for the Macintosh platform, and others also in the works for Android, etc. But I'll show you our basic map. This is at safecast.org/tilemap. The map is, again, the primary way for people to see the radiation readings gathered by Safecast volunteers. Everything you see in color has been surveyed by a volunteer using our BGeigie system, which is a mobile radiation detector with GPS and data logging. Here, this green outline is the current exclusionary zone. It's called the difficult to return zone. So this is not able to be accessed without a permit. It's possible to zoom in very far into the map to see great details in certain areas. And we have a this cursor will show you the actual reading underneath the cursor at any point. So it's quite a lot of data. We have over 55 million data points in our database now. About 70% of it is in Japan. But in addition to that, we have data from over 70 other countries now. These are all over the world. We have a lot from North America. You can imagine, really, I think we started getting volunteers on the West Coast initially, people concerned about the possibility of radiation coming via the ocean to the West Coast. In the process of gathering radiation and teaching people how to measure radiation, of course, there's a lot of learning that goes on. And you can see here in Colorado and the Rocky Mountains in the United States, the radiation levels are above average. This is, as most of you probably know, natural elevated background radiation due to both the granite rocks in the mountains and also a greater exposure to cosmic radiation because of the high altitude. And these sorts of things are very important for us, for people to learn what is normal, to learn more about radiation itself, to help them gauge their own risks. We avoid telling people what is safe, what is not safe. We consider our role to be showing them where to find information and how to gather information themselves. We have quite a lot of data and quite a lot of volunteers in Europe. Particularly, we see Czech Republic is densely surveyed, a lot in France as well, a lot in Germany, a fair amount in the UK also. We have some very important educational projects going on that were begun independently by Safecast volunteers in France and in the Czech Republic, and we are hoping to expand these efforts and to continue the educational aspect of our work. So I will switch from the map. Actually, before that, I just want to point out the map is very customizable. We can change different layers of data. For instance, if I zoom back into Japan, we try to locate other open source open data sets for radiation and include them when possible. So for instance, this one here is the United States Department of Energy NNSA overflight data that was done very early after the accident in 2011. We have similar data sets from United States and from also from Australia. It's possible to look at what we call snapshots over time to see how radiation changed over time. This is from March 2011 until September of that month, and we can sort of move them forward in time and see actually how the radiation levels have decreased overall in these areas. And this is a very important feature for us. It took a while to implement. We can look at individual logs of radiation that people have uploaded, and we can change the base map. We try to include as many open source maps as possible. The fundamental Google Maps, of course, are not open source, but we do have, for instance, OpenStreetMap. We can switch to OpenStreetMap here. The Stamen series as well. So we're constantly looking for open data and trying to find ways to include both radiation data and mapping data on our maps. I encourage everyone to go to safecast.org/tilemap and check it out for yourselves. So to continue, so yes, we have mapping data, and the data is collected by our sensors, volunteers using our sensors. This is called the B-Geigy Nano, which is a current workhorse. Within the first 18 months after the project began, we developed over 7 generations of detectors, gradually making them more compact. And this one was designed to be provided as a kit. Volunteers will purchase it. It costs about $500, and this gives them an investment, actually, of time and effort and also finance, and they become more enthusiastic generally. As I mentioned earlier, it has GPS. It's based on open source components as much as possible, Arduino and data loggers, etc. So this also is constantly under development. We now have a unit that is more easily assembled, a solid-state version that will be available soon. We have prototypes of that available. As I mentioned, we do a lot of education. This is a workshop in Koriyama in Fukushima with college students. We have them in many countries all over the world. Whenever someone is interested and is able to provide a space and the basic cost for us, we will do that. We sometimes partner with the public sector, particularly local governments. We found in Fukushima they have been fairly responsive to citizen needs in a lot of cases. In this instance, we have provided detectors that were mounted on postal delivery vehicles, and they can survey an entire town within a week or two. And our conditions for that were simply that the data that they collect be made available as open data. There was no cost to the governments themselves, and the Postal Workers Union was also happy to have more information about possible exposures that their workers would receive. Our project has included now real-time sensors, fixed sensors that are providing data real-time constantly. We had a fairly good real-world test last week when there was a very strong earthquake off of Fukushima, and our system was accessed quite a lot. We found a lot, we learned a lot about the load that our system can withstand, and have made some modifications for that as well. Fortunately, there were no unusual radiation releases from that, but it was good for our team to get active. And again, it's a global team, people all over the world communicating with each other and trying to answer questions. Back to the map again here. We have also begun an air quality project, and we have prototype units of an air quality sensor that includes detectors for PM 2.5 as well as ozone, methane, and other gases of concern, and these are in the prototype and testing stage, and hopefully will be deployed fairly soon. I want to turn to issues of citizen science, because Safecast is a citizen science project, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this, but a lot of the professional world is not, and particularly in radiation detection, there was a bit of resistance initially, we felt, towards data provided by Safecast, a bit of skepticism from the expert community, but gradually we feel that we have broken through and have gained a lot of support. As Bonnie said, with appropriate protocols, training, and oversight, volunteers can collect data of quality equal to those collected by experts. And in our case, it means setting up a system that is as foolproof and easy to use as possible, that the system itself has quality control built into it. And we feel that our approach has been borne out. Our primary principles are, yes, crowdsourced. It's open source as much as possible, open source components, open source software. The data is provided on an open basis as well. We want to make it as seamless as possible, no permissions necessary for people to use it. This relies on the information commons, which, as most of you probably know, is growing. We're becoming much more familiar with functioning within this mode of information commons, things like Wikipedia and other online communities, and they can be very effective. And also, one of the primary purposes of the Safecast project is to show the benefits of transparency, and we are trying to do it by example. And again, it's a long road. Our success is measured in increments, but we feel that gradually there is a shift in attitude towards this. In terms of openness and transparency, yes, these have been essential components of the project from the start, and we use open source hardware and software as much as possible. If there is an open source solution, we will use it. There will always be some aspects where we need to use a proprietary solution, but we try to find alternates whenever possible. And one of the purposes of this is to make the designs available for scrutiny. Like other open source projects, anyone can look at it, anyone can suggest improvements, anyone can test the quality of it, and this is very important. And of course, publication of the data as open data is hand in hand with this approach. We recently had an article, or rather a peer-reviewed paper published in the Journal of Radiological Protection. This emerged out of our participation in the RICOMET conference in 2015, and this has had over 2,500 downloads published last June, and already this many downloads. We think it's a sign of great interest in this subject in general. So our project basically is concerned with filling information gaps, and not only by gathering radiation data, but by responding to requests for broader information and advice. In order to do this, we sort of naturally started reaching out to specialists in other fields, whether it's environment, health, social issues, etc., and sort of establishing these ongoing dialogues with these experts. And this has been possible because we have been able to establish trust. They know that we are trying to be unbiased. We will not misrepresent their findings or their opinions, and this has been very mutually beneficial. And one of our roles is to provide summaries of complex issues in social media outlets, and this is a very big need. Even if the official sources are trying to be transparent, often the issues themselves are so complex they require interpretation, and we are trying to do that as much as possible. The primary purpose of this is to help people identify sources that they can use to inform themselves. And not everyone's up to this. Some people want a simple answer, yes or no, is it safe or not? But of course, it's not such a simple issue. So we encourage people to learn as much as they can and make their own decisions based on their own information search. We published a report called the Safecast Report. The first edition was last year in 2015 in March. The second edition was this year in March. It's about 100 pages long. It covers quite a lot of issues, environment issues at the Fukushima Daiichi plant, what's happening with evacuees and returnees, health issues, food issues, etc. And again, we're considering this primarily to be a source of information for people, including journalists, who need to inform themselves. And a Japanese translation will be released soon. The contents go from update of our project to the Fukushima Daiichi issues, what's happening with the water, when and how will it be decommissioned, how many evacuees were they, what's happening with the rate of return and the issues regarding that, how is the decontamination remediation process continuing, what are the overall environmental impacts, what's with the food testing, is it showing food to be relatively safe? What are the continuing risks in terms of food? And also, what is health screening showing? And particularly the issue of thyroid cancer is a major one, and we try to cover that as objectively as possible. We have found, a lot of issues after a disaster like Fukushima are not technical, they're social. They are economic. They deal with perceptions of fairness and adequacy. There are a lot of grievances which are totally valid, and this needs to be understood. There are forces, organizations which also try to magnify grievance, and there are forces and organizations that try to minimize the grievance. But the fact is that it is there, and people's perception will depend on how seriously they feel they have been wronged. As it should be no surprise to this group, but of course we found time and again that participation and input from residents is essential. And even in the case of anti-nuclear people or people who are dissenters, who disagree with the government, etc., disagree with the nuclear industry, if they are involved in the process of remediation, in the decision-making process, often they will find themselves very defensive of it. I mean, not in a negative sense. They will say, yes, we are trying very hard. Our local community is very sincere. People are doing their best. And this is because they're included and they have a stake in it and they understand really how difficult the processes are and are able to help guide them in the way they think is best. And there's lots of stakeholder engagement projects happening in Fukushima. And of course, there's a long history to this. There's quite a specialty for this field, but often they're not really as inclusive as they should be. And no matter how hard governments and other bodies try to communicate to the public, there are always people who are not reached. And it is a very complex issue, and we're now over 5.5 years into this post-accident phase. And there's a great deal of fatigue, and some people are not reached because, well, they just don't want to listen anymore. But a lot of it is due to the complexity of the issues and the difficulty of actually explaining what's going on. So I want to end with this quote from Yochai Benkler, a Harvard social scientist, and he said in a paper in 2013, "Safecast is as crisp an example as we have for how mutualism can serve as a successful workaround for failure." We are very happy at this kind of supportive word for our project, and we try to make our project worthy of this kind of praise and hope to continue in the future. That's the end of the presentation, and again, I thank you all very much for your time and patience and encourage you to get in touch with us, to visit our website, to look at our maps, to download our applications, and if you are inclined, please participate. Thank you very much.